What's up, YouTube? Welcome to ExceedTheHype.com. It's your boy Lucrecio coming at you with another video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Alright, today's video is entitled The Denver Nuggets Are Sleepers in the West. Right? So the Denver Nuggets are an upcoming team. A lot of young players, a lot of talented players that are coming up on that squad. Okay, I really feel like the Denver Nuggets are a threat to take one of those bottom seeds in the playoffs. They're not going to be amongst the elite teams, the top four. In my opinion, this upcoming season, the top four will go Golden State, San Antonio, OKC, and Minnesota, or Minnesota, OKC, however you want to flip that. To me, that's basically going to be the top four. You have a team like the Clippers falling out. You have the Jazz that are going to take a step back. Memphis has no real direction, in my opinion. They might take a step back. So even though the West is getting harder, there are some teams that really took steps back this offseason. And I really feel like one of the bottom four seeds is totally doable for the Nuggets, man. I feel like the Nuggets have an identity, which is important. They have an offensive identity. They score a lot of points. They run. They shoot a lot of threes. And, you know, which is popular in today's NBA, which is, and the Rockets are in that conversation too. I left the Rockets out. But which is very important in today's NBA. That's basically where the game is going. More open, more pace and space type game. All right, and let's look at the Nuggets roster. I feel like they have a very young roster. They have a pretty promising nucleus, and I really feel like they're going to be better than most people are giving them credit for. All right, let's talk about the real Arthur. Definitely a veteran. I've always liked this game, even when he was with Memphis, I believe, the Grizzlies or whatever. He's just basically a solid player, a dirty work type player. Will Barton. I like Will Barton coming off the bench. I think he's one of those types of players who can be in that conversation for Sixth Man of the Year, like every year. I like what he could bring offensively as a scorer and a playmaker. I think he's definitely a pretty good weapon to have coming off your bench. Malik Beasley, I don't know a lot about Malik Beasley at all. Let's talk about Wilson Chandler. Wilson Chandler, I feel like last season he did state that he wanted out of Denver, wanted to possibly join like a contending team or whatever. Wilson Chandler, I really feel like the Clippers should have really tried to see what they can conduct to get him in LA last year. I feel like he's a good player. This is my whole thing with Wilson Chandler. His career was going to go in a completely different direction when he was in New York. If you remember, before the Carmelo Anthony trade, Wilson Chandler, Amari Stoudemire, I think that's when Jeremy Lin was there, but also even before when Ray Felton was there, that team was starting to really operate, starting to click on all cylinders or whatever, before they broke that team up, cut all the talent out of New York and sent it to Denver, and Denver sent Carmelo Anthony over to New York. In Denver, when they had George Karl and Ty Lawson and all this stuff or whatever, once again, Denver was really good. When Denver was good, Wilson Chandler was very good. Was one of the big reasons why they were good. And then the coach leaves, the team loses its direction, and then you don't hear from Wilson Chandler for a while. I do feel like he's the type of veteran player who could really push a team, over the hump a little bit or whatever the case may be. But if he was to stay in Denver, which I wonder if he really is, I really feel like he'll be the veteran leadership that they kind of need to continue to push themselves upward. So I really like Wilson Chandler. I do think he could help another team, a contender, if he was to be traded or whatever the case may be. I think last year he was even asking for a buyout if necessary. I don't know how. I thought he was going to be a free agent this year, but apparently not, because he's still on the roster. So Wilson Chandler, I do like him as a veteran leader for those guys. Kenneth Faried. Kenneth Faried is an interesting one. We haven't heard much from Kenneth Faried the last couple years. There was a period a couple years ago when he was kind of like an upcoming marquee name because of his hustle, his athleticism. Even though he didn't have like a great offensive game, because of like the fact he could run the court so well, his athleticism, the dunks. the defense, the block, all the stuff he was doing, he was becoming like a household type name or whatever. Since then, it's kind of tapered off. Sometimes it happens as you get older and as whatever challenges come along or whatever. We haven't heard a lot from Kenneth Faried in the last couple of years, and I also think he's one of those candidates to be traded. I know the Cavaliers would love to have him, and I'm pretty sure there's a couple other teams that would love to have him. He's another one of those veterans. If he stays, it's fine. If he leaves, it's fine. I'm sure they'll get a good haul for him or whatever the case may be. Let's talk about Gary Harris. Gary Harris, a couple years ago, was like my favorite player when he was at Michigan State, my favorite college player. He was a very good defender. I think he still is a very good defender. Unfortunately, I don't get to watch him that much anymore. But very good defender, very good three-point shooter. Of the young talent they have, I think he's really one of their bright spots or whatever. From what I understand, he's one of the like emerging leaders of that team, one of the bright young stars of that team. I really feel like he brings a lot to the table, and he's going to be one of the main figures going forward for them. Juan Hernangomez, once again, he's another player. Because Denver isn't on TV a whole lot, you don't get to see all that often. I really don't know too much about him, to be very honest. I don't know too much about Juan Hernangomez, so we'll see. We'll see what we get out of him. Roy Hibbert was somebody they picked up off of a mid-season trade or whatever, I believe from Charlotte. Charlotte was just trying to get rid of him. Charlotte keeps trying out different centers because ultimately they want a true center to protect the rim. I think they may have finally found him. Let's talk about Nikola Jokic. He was one of the players who came out of nowhere last year. So he was mentioned. He's a media darling. People who love advanced stats and analytics or whatever absolutely love this guy. He's a great passer at the center position. There's even been a lot of people talking about possibly running the offense primarily through Jokic. So you have a ball handler or whatever. It doesn't even have to necessarily be a point guard. You have a ball handler bring the ball up, and then you kick it into Jokic and have him basically be the initiator of your offense. We'll see if they go in that direction, but obviously if he's a guy who can do that, that's a pretty good anchor or fundamental block in building your organization. Paul Millsap. Paul Millsap was the Denver Nuggets haul this offseason because he's probably he was one of the players who was coveted by a lot of teams because of his athleticism, his shooting ability, his versatility. He could score inside, and then he could step out to the three-point line. He's a good character guy. He's a good locker room guy. The only real thing you can say about Paul Millsap is that for a power forward, he isn't that big. He isn't that big. He isn't that tall. He isn't that long. But he can basically give you, for this team, I think he'll be a perfect fit because he's a stretch four. He's good defensively. And he's versatile defensively. So he's going to give them that front court scoring, but without, and he's a pretty good rebounder for his size too, without kind of the negative side, without having a big man. He can give you the point production from the paint or whatever, but you don't have to worry about having a big, slow power forward, lagging behind the play and trying to switch to guards or whatever. So Paul Millsap will fit perfectly. I thought Denver would end up with Kevin Love, but it didn't end up falling that way. They end up with Paul Millsap, and I'm pretty sure they're happy with that. Don't know a lot about Monte Morris. Emmanuel Mudiay is a very interesting guy going forward with this team. Obviously, coming out of high school was one of the blue chip prospects coming out of high school. Very good player. He went overseas for that 1 year, came back, was drafted high, had a whole lot of high expectations, and then reality kind of set in. Now, I think Emmanuel Mudiay is a very good player. The problem is, I don't know how he fits necessarily in today's NBA, where the point guards are usually like outstanding shooters. All the good teams have point guards who shoot like 40% or above or whatever from the three-point line, and then you have a guy who at this time doesn't seem like he can really stretch the floor with his three-point shooting. I don't know what they're going to do with him ultimately. I know they have a lot of Jamal Murray playing backup point guard sometimes too. Not that he doesn't start or whatever, but he plays point guard minutes as well. We'll see. We really will just see what happens with Emmanuel Mudiay. Best case scenario, he comes back this season and he shows a vastly improved 3-point shot. That will help him out a lot. I really do like him as a player. He's a big point guard. He can see the floor well. He makes good passes and all this stuff. It's just the shooting. The shooting is the problem. And in today's NBA, the point guard has to be able to make threes at a consistent rate. All right. Jamal Murray is kind of their star going forward. He's between him and Gary Harris, they're kind of those. And it's funny because they kind of play the same position, but those guys are the future of this team, are going to push this team in the direction that they want to go. He's a great shooter. I think he's a pretty good ball handler. I know they want to kind of try him out at point guard. A lot of people say he's not necessarily a true point guard or whatever. He doesn't have the game of a point guard as far as like the pass first mentality or whatever. But we'll see. We will continue to monitor and see where his game goes or whatever. But ultimately, the direction of this team is going to go where this guy leads them. He's obviously their best player at this point, or he will be their best player. And yeah, they will go as he goes. Jameer Nelson, I don't expect him to be there next season. He's another veteran who could help out in the locker room or whatever. But as far as I'm sure they will want to clear the salary and they'll want to use that roster spot for another young player. And then Mason Plumlee, the typical Plumlee center who can give you some offensive rebounding and a little bit of rim protection or whatever. But ultimately, it's not necessarily the parts of this team, which this team has some very good parts. It's the way the team plays together, and I think it's their identity that makes them tough. We all saw earlier in last season where they actually defeated the Warriors, and when Kevin Durant famously was talking about that they would get swept if they met them. That Golden State would sweep the Nuggets if they met them in the playoffs, which just goes to show the Nuggets almost made the playoffs this year. So I really think this team is going to ultimately be a sleeper this year. I do think they very well may make the playoffs, and if they do make the playoffs, they have a lot of firepower. They have a good upset rating, basically. If they make it to the playoffs, especially if they were to catch the Spurs or something like that. Not that I think that they could beat the Spurs, but the Spurs have trouble with, teams with a lot of like youth and athleticism and firepower. So this is a team that has a high upset percentage, basically, or upset rating. If you play against them, you have to be very careful because they can get hot at any time and kind of blow you out the building. All right, so that's why I think they're a sleeper in the Western Conference. Leave your comments. Let me know if you agree, if you disagree, or whatever. All right, as always, see you next time.